Welcome to the Animation Podcast, an official podcast of FilmBook. The Animation Podcast is a weekly animation news podcast that reports on the latest animation movie and TV show news.
Hello, hello, hello. It is I, your beloved Count Olaf. I don't know where I was going with that. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Animation Podcast, a weekly podcast about all things animation, brought to you by FilmBook. My name is Ephraim Bernie, not Count Olaf. But if you are tuning into the Animation Podcast for the first time, what I do on this podcast is discuss the current week's animation news. Find more The Animation Podcast episodes on FilmBook, that's film-book.com, by using the search term The Animation Podcast. Pretty simple there. If you're listening to this podcast on iTunes or another podcasting service, please rate and review this episode. If you are listening to this podcast on YouTube, please like our video, subscribe, and consider becoming a patron on Patreon at patreon.com/FilmBook. And you know what? Put a little comment in the comment section saying, Ephraim is cute. Why not? I could use the self-esteem. Your support helps us create more engaging content. This episode goes out to our series of unfortunate events fans, A very niche group of of viewers out there. Anybody out there? I always thought that would have been a really good animated series. I felt like the artwork lended itself very well to that. This is me ranting. Regardless, in biggest news, the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, also known as NATAS, however you want to say it, has announced that they will be making an entirely new Emmy Awards ceremony specifically for television aimed at children and family-friendly content. While to me it kind of feels silly to delineate between kids and adult content, I think all of us know at this point that movies made for kids and TV shows made for kids can be just as effective and profound as something more adult-minded. The Emmys have tended to be relatively scarce, representing animation and content aimed for younger audiences, so this new award ceremony can probably only be a good thing, I'd say. This is the first time a new ceremony has been added since 1979, which is, what is that going on? That's almost 50 years, gang. Or not. Doing my math. Almost 45 years, gang. And it's likely a response to the growing economical and cultural presence of animation, even in this past year or two alone. When I tell you there was a big boom during pandemic, the pandemic era, it really did shake things up in Hollywood, and I think they're probably noticing that. At the last Emmys, this is an example that I even wrote down here. At the last Emmys, the category for individual achievement in animation received almost 300 submissions. That's way over all the other categories. So again, award shows kind of feel silly to me to begin with, but there are so many brilliant, loving people in the world of animation, even if it's just specified for children's content and family-friendly content, and I look forward for all of them to them being celebrated, because it's such a grueling job, and they really deserve it. So, congrats to everybody all those future winners. It's an exciting world that you're about to step into. In other firsts, Ice Age 6, I know it's silly to say that right coming after first, but believe me, I'll get to it. In other firsts, Ice Age 6, The Adventures of Buck Wild, dropped a trailer this week, and this is the first film from the Ice Age series that did not come from Blue Sky Studios. If you remember, Disney shut down Blue Sky Studios earlier this year and handed the Ice Age IP over to Bardell Entertainment, who you might know if you've watched the Dragon Prince or the King Julian TV shows. I think they did work on Rick and Morty too. The story of this Ice Age movie, the story focuses on the two Possum brothers from the series that I don't know their names off the top of my head. But they fall back down into the land of dinosaurs that's hidden under the ice. I think that might have been the third one where you discovered that. But it's hidden under the ice, and they join their buddy Buck for a crazy adventure, kind of capturing this idea. I think they probably get it, from the trailer at least, it looks as though they're getting in over their heads, and they really wanted to go on adventures like him, and then they find out, oh no, it's not as easy as they thought it would be. I'm going to be honest with you guys, because I always am. I think when your film series is now focusing on the peripheral comic relief characters introduced in the sequel and then the trequel, I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I'm talking about, I think it might be time to hang up the Scrat, you know? Except, I don't know, I think they might have already hung up Scrat. Is he still in the movies? He's not in the trailer. I felt like I read an article about him not being in the movies anymore. I can't remember. Regardless, the animation kind of looks off. No, I mean that in the best possible way. But except, not really. The characters weirdly don't feel, they don't look rendered. They don't look fully rendered a lot of the time. And it could have just been a style choice, but everything kind of looks like that weird computerized clay from early on. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh on this thing, but it's not... it doesn't read as incredibly exciting to me. It does look like TV show CGI a little bit, if you know what I'm talking about. But if you're one of the 7 Ice Age Uber fans that are still kicking, you'll be happy to know that the film comes out on Disney Plus on January 28th of 2022. It's being directed by an Ice Age alum. He was a producer. It's John C. Donkin. Though this is his debut as a director, so again, take all of it with a grain of salt. It's coming from people that know the property, but who knows? It's a new beginning for all of them. Maybe they're trying to change things up a bit. I can appreciate that. In big news, we're moving on over to the streamers right now and big networks. In big network news, this week, Disney Pixar gave us a trailer for the company's next big project, Turning Red. The concept follows a 13-year-old girl named Mei Lee as her new complicated teenage life takes an unexpected turn when she discovers her bloodline's ability to turn into a giant red panda when their emotions are heightened. The film will be directed by Academy Award winner Dami Shi, I think that's how you say her name, who Pixar fans, you guys will remember her for her short Bao. It's the one about the woman who takes care of the little living dumpling. Very, very sweet. It's been one of my favorite ones they've done in a while. Turning Red stars a relative newcomer, Rosalie Chiang, as Mei Lee, and Sandra Oh as her kind of overprotective mother, Ming. This looks like an interesting style for what is the colossus that is Pixar to try its hand at. She has expressed before her interest and adeptness in animation that honors her Chinese-born roots, and you can see that in this trailer. The movie certainly embraces the kind of expressiveness and bold emotions that are so connected with Eastern-styled cartoons and storytelling. After watching the trailer twice at this point, because I had to do my research, I had to do my homework, I actually think that the premise is pretty cool. The premise of a character who turns into a monster whenever they become too emotional in any capacity, that's really intriguing. That's a really intriguing concept. And I think it's really smart to partner up the expressiveness that she is so great at utilizing with actual story consequences. And I think it's a great example of a show don't tell kind of mentality with a bigger idea of learning how to communicate when you're feeling what you're feeling on the inside, which is a huge part of growing up. I think that's going to be a big part of this kind of coming-of-age story. Plus, she has also worked on Inside Out. She meaning the person, but also she referring to she. She also worked on Inside Out, so this is something this is well within her wheelhouse. There is a bit of a turning red flag, though. For me, pardon the pun there, and pardon me saying pardon the pun there, God. That could, it could just be a confused kind of moment for me in the trailer. And I don't like to take trailers too much at their word. I'm going to talk more about that later. But it seems as though Mei Lee starts in a place where we might want her to end up. if that makes any sense. The trailer starts with her introducing herself as someone who does what she wants and says what she wants, regardless of what other people think, which is great. But also, since we know that she's going to learn a lesson and that the change will likely center around her ability to communicate emotions, to have her start in a place of like emotional confidence and self-assuredness kind of implies that either things are only going to get worse by the end, or that we are just going to return to the status quo, which I feel will ultimately be unsatisfying. It could be that maybe she learns to, I don't know, like take other people, like acknowledge other people, and if it's that she kind of is brash and doesn't consider other people's feelings, but it doesn't seem like that's the direction that they're going in with this, and it also feels kind of like not an empower, because I think it will be sort of a young girl empowerment story, and that seems like a strange message to send. Maybe it's about the relationship between her and her mom. That could be the focal point. It certainly seems to be a lot of the promotional writing seems to be centered around that, but that could also just be because Sandra Oh is the big star. But considering Pixar also did a movie like Brave, which was entirely centered around a mother-daughter relationship, it seems like it would be strange if they're retreading those grounds. I don't know. I think the emotional concept of a character that turns into a monster whenever they feel any kind of strong emotion, not just like the Hulk when he gets angry, but like when she gets excited or surprised. I think that's all really exciting and a cool way of telling a story. So who knows? A lot of this is just me theorizing. The movie comes out on March 11th, 2022, so we can see for ourselves. But get excited, Pixar fans, because this one could be interesting. I'm already talking way too much. Let's move on to Netflix. This week we got the release of Extinct from the Simpsons movie director David Silverman. I haven't given it a watch just yet. I might review it in the next week. We'll see if there's enough of a demand for it. If you want me to watch it and review it, comment in the little comments section there. And I see all of them, and I appreciate whenever you do. The movie is a Chinese-American co-production about an imaginary species, not American, though, you know, there are aspects of American species that could be imaginary, who knows, Mothman, about an imaginary species of creature called the Flummels. They look like hamsters if hamsters were shaped like donuts. If you've seen the promotional art for this, probably. Which seems to be kind of a running gag in the trailer when the two main characters see a case of donuts in a bakery and they try to rescue them. So, you know, it's cute. It stars Adam Devine as Ed and Rachel Bloom as Op. I guess Ed and Op. I wonder if that means anything. The two Flummels, the Ed and Op are the two Flummels that can travel through time and space and whatnot. They meet and join forces with other extinct creatures on their quest to kind of make it back to their home. The Op character seems to be excitable and adventure-minded, and Ed seems to be the more kind of cautious of the two, though both of them are sort of, at least from the trailer, kind of fall victim to the strange idiot in the strange land archetype. I have a lot of hesitation taking most of trailers as like an actual look at what the movie will be. I said that before. It's especially true to like children's animated movies. They tend to be the same cliched lines and quips in trailers. So much so that they kind of become interchangeable. And I feel like that is the problem that I'm feeling with this Extinct thing. And I know that oftentimes these trailers are made by people who didn't even have a hand in the movie. So, I don't know. It's hard to say if this one's going to be good or not. Again, you can watch it right now and make your own opinion. I often get a little cynical with American-Chinese collaborated movies, too. I think I tend to think that they usually are the result of two big production companies trying to create something that they think will appeal to the other's demographic. And they don't usually come from a big idea or the need to tell a story. But I also don't want to generalize something I haven't seen yet. So, you know, maybe the more I talk about, maybe I will watch it. I don't know. There's a lot of movies I'd rather watch first, but you guys let me know if you want to. Okay, moving on over to anime news and trailers. In big anime news, this is about as big as it gets, gang. We are looking at the new teaser trailer for the last season of Attack on Titan, which drops on Crunchyroll and Hulu on January 9th, 2022, in over 200 countries and territories worldwide. I didn't even know there were that many countries and territories. From the trailer, we can expect this season to give us some of the answers that the fans have been covering their little white boards with string and newspaper clippings for what seems like ages now. It wasn't very long. It's not a very long trailer, so we don't get too much. And it doesn't look like the show, so famous for killing off characters gruesomely and indiscriminately, is going to be pulling many of its punches. We don't get too much information, like I said, but we see Eren Yeager kind of staring off into this pillar of light, which seemingly inches away from the answers that the show has been giving us spiraling conspiracies over. We get flashes of other main characters and their Titan counterparts fighting. And then Eren is embracing what appears to be several bombs or nukes or something falling towards him. So that's probably going to be more antagonism from the kind of inner mechanisms and the shadow government of the utopia that they live in. It's not a utopia, they live in squalor. I don't know why I'm saying that. There's also a moment which is probably supposed to be showcasing more Titans, but it actually made me laugh really hard. This is just, I don't know, it's just that there's this big Titan with like a really long face in the trailer, and he sort of just scoops up some guy in his mouth like he's an anteater or something. I don't know. I'm looking at it right now. I'm watching it in front of me. I always thought that the Titans were simultaneously like, they're scary. They are scary to look at, but they're really funny too. And I was one of those guys who was super, super invested in the show when it first came out, but I couldn't maintain the excitement between the huge hiatuses that the show would take. So I haven't watched in a while, but maybe now that it's out, I'll pick it. Now that it's all done, I could probably pick it back up and watch it all. Maybe I'll binge watch it or something. Also, in anime news, fans of Misaki Takamatsu's Skip and Loafer manga will be excited to hear that the story is being made into an anime series. For those who don't know, Skip and Loafer, or sometimes it's called Skip to Loafer, is a classic country mouse meets city rat tale. Tale as old as time, where a very ambitious type A kind of girl named Iwakura Mitsumi leaves her small town to go to the prestigious Tokyo high school, only to be quickly overwhelmed by the big city. But she teams up with her classmate Shima Susake. I hope that's how you... I'm so bad with names, guys. It's embarrassing at this point. But Shima Susake... he's a very chill dude who knows the city like the back of his hand. And with all the luck, with any luck that they have between the two of them, they could survive high school in the big city streets of Tokyo. The manga was ranked 7th in the 2020 edition of Takara Jimasha's... You guys know who I'm talking about if you read this thing, but Takara Jimasha's manga guidebook. So it's no surprise that the adaptation is on its way. No news on when we might be able to watch or see some more of it, but if you're a fan of the comic, there's a lot of reasons to be hyped. Okay, moving to animation around the world. In animation around the world, we only really have one big news article to talk about, but it is a big one. Across the pond, the folks over at BBC have announced that they have a plan to triple their current investment in animation for kids aged 7 to 12. This news came from the announcement from BBC's Director of Children and Education Content, Patricia Hidalgo. She says that over the next 18 months, the broadcasting service aims to grow to airing 3 original British animated shows for kids per year. Currently, they only do 1 per year. This is a massive investment, and while we don't know just how much money is being spent, we can speculate from last year's content budget of £58 million that this is going to be an evolution that costs well over £150 million or $200 million. This might be a controversial statement. I don't know. I don't think this is going to be a big thing. Look, animation has never been what BBC is particularly good at. I think I'm not being controversial when I say that. And Hidalgo, I have a quote here. Hidalgo will be the first to admit, as she is quoted saying, British animation often loses its identity in an attempt to replicate American animation with American sentiments and American values. And I think starting with a children's television program to kind of get your foot in the door, that's a great idea. And doubling down on that, that's where most animation started. But it's also clear that I think BBC and Hidalgo have more ambitious plans on the way. This announcement is coupled with the investment, this tripling down on it, goes hand in hand with an update in the channel's $1 million Ignite program, which was a nationwide search. If you didn't hear about this was actually pretty cool. It's a nationwide search where over 1,000 animated pilot concepts were submitted to BBC in the hopes of finding the UK equivalent to a mega hit like The Simpsons. Hidalgo told us that this is the most recent update, that out of the 1,000 screened, 40 have been narrowed down to give closer inspection, and out of those 40, there will be 3 that receive funded pilots with the opportunity for a full green light. And I'm curious to see what an animation that fully embraces British culture and identity might look like. As opposed to something like The Royals that was really just HBO. We just got that on HBO, which was really just like a poorly thought out SNL skit. I'll be mean about The Royals, I really will. A show that is rooted in the actual day-to-day highs and lows of being a UK citizen I'm interested in that. I want to see what that would be like. Most modern-day comedy has all of its roots in British writing and concepts. I have no doubt that if BBC sticks to their guns and makes something that with heart that honors writing and comedy and characters, we could see an English version of The Simpsons or Bob's Burgers or something like that in the next few years, and I think that would be really exciting. All right, I'm already behind. Okay, we're moving right along. I actually do have, I'm always saying I'm surprised, but I actually do have some information, some news from home video and digital HD releases this week. In the world of home video and Blu-ray releases, we actually have some exciting... I just said that. How great. And it's an exciting release date announcement. The Batman animated series, the one from 2004 to 2008, is finally getting a complete series Blu-ray collection on February 1st of next year. The series, which often lives in the shadow of the 90s Batman animated series, has been a favorite for Caped Crusader fans for a while, and also had one of the most impressive rosters of regular and guest talent for a superhero show. That is crazy, some of the people that they had on that. And people before they were big, they came out of that. The collection also includes all episodes of the complete series, as it should, if they're going to call it a complete series, as well as several featurettes, including an all-new one exploring Batman's complicated relationships with each of his allies, and what sets him apart from his more empowered contemporaries. Also, in Blu-ray news, we have gotten a few new updates on 20th Century Fox's, from 20th Century Fox regarding the home release of their most recent animated film, Ron's Gone Wrong. The movie will be available in 4K Ultra HD sometime this coming December, probably for Christmas season. And it comes with 2 on-disc interviews with Zach Galifianakis and Jack Dylan Grazer, the movie's stars, as well as a featurette with the artists from Locksmith, the animation company, about the work that went into designing the characters. It's pretty cool because it's CGI, but it's kind of designed to look sort of like stop-motion animation. I don't know. It's an interesting... Locksmith is somebody to pay attention to. They're pretty new, I think, but they're exciting. All right, I'm at 23 minutes, boys and girls and people. We got to do the Animation is Film Festival review. This is the 4th one in a row. This is for The Crossing. I might have one more. I can't remember if I did another review. But this one is for The Crossing. I'll give you the lowdown first. You gotta get the lowdown. The Crossing is directed by Florence Miailhe. I hope I'm saying that right. It's directed by Florence Miailhe. More on her later. But written by Marie Despelchine and Florence Miailhe. And it's starring Emilie Lan Dürr, as young Kiona, and Maxime Gemin as Adriel, and Florence Miailhe as older Kiona. Florence is wearing all sorts of hats with this movie. Okay, so The Crossing, or La Traversée, or C. If you can't tell, I'm not French. The Crossing, if you want to say the French name La Traversée, is in many ways an intimidating movie to review. The French film about two Jewish siblings attempting to escape Russia during times of persecution is based on the real-life story of Marie Desplechin, her family, and is brought to us through some of the most innovative and at times jaw-dropping animation. This is due in no small part to director, animator, co-star, co-writer Florence Miailhe, who, among many things, is a painter who spearheaded an entirely new form of animation known as motion painting. Essentially, a motion painter is the in motion painting. The animator paints the entire film on a slab of glass in front of the camera, which records every newly finished frame. Because of this unique process, the film has an almost intoxicating tactile feel to it. You can see brush marks and smudges of where characters had previously been but then erased. There isn't a second of this film that does not look like something out of a museum exhibit. The art style alone is something to behold, and the fact that this is a feature-length film, it boggles the mind the amount of effort required to pull something like this off. It's also, it's crazy to look at. You really gotta watch it. It's also worth commending the film, as almost half of its animation team was conducted by an all-female team of Czech animators from Moir Film Studios, which was newly established. They're also doing this film, this motion painting. So that's very cool that they're kind of using newer people and newer studios. I guess you kind of have to with a film like this, but it's worth commending. Also worth noting, before I start to cover the story, that The Crossing is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. While I was personally, floored by the animation style, the highly experimental and stylized approach is going to make it difficult to concentrate on the narrative a lot of the time. And I felt as though, I'll be honest with you guys, I felt the animation sometimes overshadowed the story that it was trying to convey. But let me tell you a little bit about that story. The film follows a young woman named Kiona and her brother Adriel, who are separated from their parents while trying to escape their small Russian village and set off on a journey to the border to find salvation in Western Europe. The movie has sort of an episodic approach to its storytelling, as most sort of migrant survival stories do. Kiona and Adriel find themselves in a new location, surrounded by a new cast of antagonists and allies, whom they must travel through on their way to the border. An interesting narrative device that the writers use is Kiona's sketchbook, which she fills with drawings of the many faces and places that she encounters. The sketchbook doesn't really have any build or payoff in the grand scheme of the story itself, but it does work thematically with the art style, and it is interesting when you see other characters express a fascination with her drawings. It's a cool thing. It also kind of bookends the story. You see her looking at the drawings in the beginning of the book, when she's in the beginning of the movie, where she's kind of looking on and remembering the story, and then it finishes with that later on. To be subjective for a moment, I have never been a huge fan of survivor stories in general. I feel like very often the writers get caught up in the scenarios and forget to find opportunities to actually characterize their heroes other than a person who needs to face adversity, or faces a lot of adversity. These movies can be exciting and even inspirational in circumstances like this when it's a true story, but I usually have trouble keeping invested when I don't learn about the characters I'm watching. I feel as though The Crossing does fall victim to that a little bit. Kiona and Adriel have so much that they are constantly battling against. It's difficult to really get a look at who they are as people outside of a crisis. And that might not be too important to a lot of you guys, but to me it helps me attach to a character if I can see them as more than just a survivor. You know what I'm saying? That being said, the set pieces and action events of the film almost don't need characters for you to empathize with, as you're already so dazzled by the animation. There are mansions and prisons and circuses and chases through dark forests that are truly vivid to watch, because everything is painted and drawn the way it is. These backdrops and environments feel like they breathe and move the same way characters might. They have such a striking tone with each new scene that they set. They almost tell a story that's more engaging than that of what the actual dialogue has at times. And this is one last note. That's like, take that as you will, because that's a good thing and a bad thing, kind of. This is one last note, but the transitions in this movie are some of the coolest you're ever going to see, right? Again, because everything is being painted on one slate in front of you, there's a seamlessness it's hard to even describe. You get the feeling that you're watching someone have an idea right in front of you, if that makes sense. You can see as they were painting them, they were getting inspired to do the next thing. There's this, it's I'm like stumbling over myself because I really do think it's great. It's like everyone who touched this film had some tiny impact in what you see in the final product. And I know that's with every film, but you can see the thumbprints and the swishes of the brush that someone must have had there. And that's thrilling to watch and as they incorporate that. There's this terrific transition that comes as Kiona is traveling on a train across country, and she falls asleep in her seat, and then it transitions into a map and the train traveling across it. But you can still see the indents of her face in the map. Like her eyes become like valleys, and the bridge the train is traveling across is like made out of her nose. I can't even describe it. It's so cool. It's like she becomes part of the Russian geography. And it's such a smart move that feels directly linked to the way that the film is animated. And you don't see that too often. Have like such a kind of harmony between story and transition and form and you know, all that stuff. That's all I really have to say on this one. I could keep mushing and on and on and on about the stuff, but I don't want to. I'm at like 32 minutes. So look, I'm going to give this 3.5 out of 5. If you appreciate exciting new animation, this is one to watch. The story, though, it sometimes plays second fiddle to the artwork, and it is inspirational, and you can really tell that the team behind this one really, really poured their hearts and souls into it. So the story falls kind of second place sometimes, but outside of that, it is stellar. It really is so cool to watch. Let's see. I got 32 minutes. I don't know if I've talked a lot, and I didn't have time to watch something that I really feel confident in recommending to you guys or discussing with you. I watched some of Hitmonkey this week, so I could say watch that this week, maybe, and I can talk about it next week. Yeah, because I don't have my thoughts together on it, and I don't want to say something that I would regret later on. So yeah, why don't we stay with that right now? That I will recommend you watch Hitmonkey, and we'll stick around. We'll talk about it later next week. Okay, I'm gonna wrap things up right now because I'm already going over. Thank you guys for listening to the Animation Podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe, and you can find more of my work on FilmBook. That's film-book.com. Just search for Ephraim Birney. That's EPHRAIM BIRNEY. You can see it in the article. Or search the Animation Podcast. You can also find me on Twitter at FlumpFrumblers or on Instagram at Ephraim_Burning. If you would like to contact us, you can email us at podcast@filmbook.com, that's film-book.com, with the Animation Podcast in the subject line. Tune in next week for the next episode of the Animation Podcast and all things animation, and thank you for listening. I will see you then.
Thanks for listening to the Animation Podcast. Find more of the Animation Podcast on FilmBook, on your favorite podcast service, and on YouTube.